Welcome, live from New York City, a brand new episode of Part of the Problem. Me and, of course, Robbie the Fire Bernstein in our old studio. It's been quite a while since we've done a podcast episode in this room.
I didn't realize we still worked here.
I didn't even realize it was ours to maybe do if we wanted to. I feel we've been in the studio a few times, but I feel like we've been in the other room. This was, of course, our home for many years. It's kind of a throwback to be here, where I recorded Pierce Morgan's show today in person, so I appreciate you guys coming into the city. I mean, it was all... Listen, man, I enjoyed doing that show, I think, but today was it was ridiculous. It was a lot of just me laughing at the absurdity of it. But anyway, I mean, it was a fun time, I guess. I'm glad I did it. Sarah Palin was on the panel with me.
What? Oh, that's kind of cool.
It was very bizarre, and then she ended up... I don't know. It was strange.
She's a Russia expert. I don't know why she hasn't been around for the last 3 years.
Yeah, well,
talk about things she actually got right.
When we could have used her. You know what I mean? We could have really gotten to the bottom of that whole thing, but Sarah Palin... But she's back now. Kind of, at least, on Pierce Morgan. Anyway.
How'd she look?
She's older than she was last time I saw her, for sure. But, you know, aren't we all? I'm sure I'm older than the last time she saw me. But I mean, she looked fine. She had a tattoo on her hand.
I think she's
out. I noticed at one point.
I think she's out divorced partying it up now. I think she's doing a whole new thing.
Ah, interesting. I was like, oh, are you tatted up? Like, really, Sarah Palin? Anyway, this is it. We're a week out from the presidential election.
But you know what's more exciting than that?
What's that?
It's that next week, Sunday, 8 p.m. for free on YouTube. You can watch my comedy special.
That's the biggest news of the week.
You don't even have to worry about the election at this point.
That is very exciting news, dude. We're all ready for that. It's going to be great. I'm excited for a lot of people to see that. And you'll either be really happy or disappointed next week.
Right.
And either way, you need comedy in your life.
There you go. 8 p.m. And also at the Shell this weekend up in New Hampshire. You can go to my website for details. Back to you, Dave.
Hell yeah. And of course, come see both of us on the road, comicdavesmith.com. We still got a few more fun gigs.
Poughkeepsie and Philly.
Poughkeepsie and Philadelphia. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a crazy little stretch of time here for the country. Obviously, okay, we still have a week left, but... What we could start talking about today, which I think is the topic everyone's kind of talking about.
The October surprise is Trump's a Nazi?
That's what it turns out.
I would have thought they'd have a better surprise on that.
Well, I will say, so far, viewing kind of, if you look at, say, the last 2 weeks of a presidential election, and we just got Trump's second to last week. And I mean this, however you feel about Donald Trump politically, in terms of his close of the campaign, it's been incredible. He's, politically speaking, done an excellent job. He tends to do this. Donald Trump, look, his real expertise is in putting on a show. He knows how to put on a show better than anybody else. And he typically closes very strong. He'll do a ton of rallies. He'll have big spectacles. And I think that's part of the reason why he always does better than he's polling. Like, he did better than he was polling in 2016 on election night, same thing in 2020. And because the polls are closer this year than they were either of those years, that is a very good sign for Donald Trump's chances of getting reelected. The two big things were obviously he did the Joe Rogan Experience, and then he had a big old Nazi rally at Madison Square Garden. And so while
a legendary venue known for that, and nothing else.
Yes, well, while Donald Trump, right, literally, it's while Donald Trump is putting on what looks like substantially better than 2016 or 2020 in terms of the way he's closing out the campaign, where you look at it and you go like, whoa, this is a huge victory for Donald Trump. On the other side, it does seem like, I don't even know how to put, it seems like there was a meeting, like if there was a meeting with all the most powerful Democratic donors and the people in the corporate media, and they were like, all right, guys, it's crunch time. Here's our ace in the hole. We're going to call him a Nazi. Has anybody tried this yet? Has this made its rounds? People are going to be so shocked by the accusation that they're going to be like, and it's wild to watch. We're like, that's really it. This is it. This is what you guys are going to do right now? Your final pitch is just going to be like that he's a Nazi. The same thing you've been hysterically shrieking for 8 years. And in terms of like they seem to be grasping at straws more than ever before to even justify the claim.
Now's the time for the P-tape, Puff Daddy tapes of him banging Putin. You got to give me something.
Well, you'd think you'd have something, but I don't know. I mean, we got a few days to go here. I think even at this point, by the way, if there were to be, they call it an October surprise and not a November surprise for a reason. Because if you were to...
November nuke, maybe it'll be a new thing.
Well, look, if you were to have some devastating thing that you were going to release on a candidate, the timing would be around last week or the week before. That's when you want to get it out. You would not want to put it out on November 2nd if the election is on November 5th, because you want to make sure that everyone's heard this, and not just heard it, but like it's been repeated over and over. Now, you could argue that we have a shorter attention span than ever. Maybe you slow that down. But if you had something, my thought is you would have released it by now. I could be wrong about maybe something big will get released, but it seems less and less likely as time goes on. And it seems more like, oh no, this really is what they've got, is he's doing a rally in Madison Square Garden. And so are they in the 30s. Nazi.
It seemed like he put on a hell of a show. It felt like I was watching Victory. That's what felt like.
Look, it's a weird thing, right? If you go by the polls, which are not always exactly right, but again, there's a pretty strong case that it's very close, that either side could win. If you extrapolate a little bit out of the polls, like the fact of like where Trump was in 2016, where he was in 2020, where he is now, it looks more likely than not that Donald Trump will win, but that could not be the case. It's close enough that it's like, yeah, maybe 6 out of 10 times Donald Trump wins or something like that. Maybe even a little less. I will say, and this is not scientific at all, I'm just saying, and I think almost everybody knows this, if you just go by kind of the intangibles, you're like, what am I seeing? If I didn't have access to polls, if I didn't have that, and I just was going by like, what am I seeing on social media? What am I seeing at events? What am I seeing in the corporate media? What am I seeing at, like all the signs on the ground, all the people you talk to? It feels like Donald Trump is about to have a landslide victory. The amount of energy that is in Trump supporters right now, and the amount of energy that's been drained out of Democrats, I don't think I've ever seen anything like this in a presidential election. I shouldn't say that. Obama in 2008 certainly had that. Obama in 2008 there was just this feeling like there is no enthusiasm on your side, and we have all the enthusiasm in the world on our side. That's how it feels right now. I'm not saying that's like a compelling scientific argument, but it is weird to feel that way and still see everything on paper saying, oh, this is very close. We'll see. So Trump puts on, by the way, you know what? Let's just play, before we even get into it, let's play one of the clips I sent you was I can't remember which one it was, the media freaking out about the Trump rally. Yeah, here, let's just to get a little sense of like, so we're not overplaying their reaction. Here, this is MSNBC.
But that jamboree happening right now, you see it there on your screen, in that place is particularly chilling.
Just as a heads up, you
because
do have
in
your email
1939,
address up
more
on
than
screen.
20,000 supporters of a different fascist leader, Adolf Hitler, packed the garden for a so-called pro-America rally. A rally where speakers voiced anti-Semitic rhetoric from a stage draped with Nazi
if you could pause
banners.
it right there. I mean, the argument so far is that the Nazis also had a rally at Madison Square Garden. By the way, Donald Trump has been known to pay for things in cash. Do you know who else used cash? The American Nazi Party.
Ooh.
All of their members used cash. This seems to be the first thing. It's an event. They had an event at Madison Square Garden. So did Donald Trump. You want to learn about some other Nazis? Patrick Ewing. You ever heard about that guy? Constant events at Madison Square Garden.
Disney on Ice.
Disney on Ice. Bunch of Nazis. It's just like they
circus?
don't even like attempt to make an argument. It's just like, yeah, they're having a rally, a big rally at Madison Square Garden. Like politicians do rallies at arenas all the time. The idea of trying to spin selling out the Garden as some type of Nazi indication, and here let's keep playing.
The press reported,
this
quote,
is real.
instantly, a dozen or more stormtroopers set upon him, knocking him down and beating him as he held his head in his arms. Most of his clothing was torn from his body. Later, he was booked for disorderly conduct. Now, against that backdrop of history, Donald Trump, the man who has threatened to use the military against opponents he calls enemies from within, who has threatened to use the troops to quell what he says are lawless cities, and to use those troops to carry out mass deportations of immigrants, is once again turning
all right, so let's pause it here. So that's the connection. So a Jewish guy rushed the stage and got beat up and was later charged with rushing the stage, which, by the way, I mean, I understand it's a Nazi rally and like there's high emotions. You know, we were talking about the American Nazi Party rally in the 30s. I'm like, I get that. And I get if you even go like, if that's over your line of like, once you openly say you're a Nazi, I think you deserve to be like physically assaulted or something like that, which I think is a dangerous game to start playing. But like, first of all, just on the actual Nazi rally in the 30s, you either have an event or you don't. Like you either get a permit or rent out a venue and are able to have that event, or you don't, or you're not allowed to have it. But if we're going to say, hey, well, there's a free society, and so even though we disagree with your views, you're allowed to rent this out and have it or whatever, fine. You're not allowed to rush the stage. Like, once an event is a sanctioned legal event, somebody's not allowed to just rush in the middle. So even when they go like, and you know who ended up getting booked? The Jewish guy. He ended up getting, it's like, well, listen, dude, all I'm saying is at any concert, at any sporting event, at anything, if you rush the stage, you're probably going to get assaulted, and you're going to be the one who gets charged after it. Like, that's not, it doesn't matter. I can't, like, if I rush the stadium I rush a football field and then I get beat up a bunch, and then I'm like, they're like, when the cops come, I go, no, I'd like to press charges against all of the people who were manhandling me down there. The cops are going to laugh in my face, take me to jail. So I'm just saying, as fucked up as that does sound, by the way, that's the story they're telling. And the connection here is, Rob, you see, well, a mob of people beat up this Jewish guy who rushed the stage in the 30s. And Donald Trump has said he's going to use the military to crack down on riots and to do mass deportations. By the way, Rob, as you can tell, the outrage from MSNBC is that the only proper role of the military is slaughtering brown babies in third world countries for bullshit reasons, which they're supposed to be doing their job and killing Muslims based off lies. But instead, Donald Trump wants to have them do something here. Or what, like, that's the connection. So really, it's just like the Nazis. You get it.
Yeah. And I mean, and also, if you're one lone Jew, what are you doing rushing a stage? You need multiple people to at least have an impact.
Probably not the best idea. And these are Nazis. They don't care for you.
This is total ADD. But the greatest clothesline I ever saw in my life was I was once at a Yankee rain delay game. And every once in a while, people get bored and they would slip and slide on the thing, and security would go get them. And there's one guy, and it would be fun. Like, you would just be sitting there rooting for the one guy. It was like a great cat and mouse game. And one guy took, and he started running, and he dodged like 3 security guards, and the guy just clotheslined him like WWF, just knocked the guy clean out. And
it's rare to pull off a real clothesline.
It was full scale. The guy was turning around, and a security guard turned right back.
Oh, he didn't see it.
It's boom.
They say it's always the clothesline you don't see coming is the one that really gets you. Well,
point just being, if you rush a stage, you might you're going to get manhandled.
Yeah, those weren't even Nazis, and that guy got manhandled, or maybe they were not. We don't know for sure. Anyway, regardless of, however, look. All right, let's finish this thing, and then I'll make my point.
But I think
we pretty much got the gist of it.
That was the end of it.
Oh, that was it. Okay, so no matter however you feel, even if you agree with the message and you think this was a Nazi-style rally, which, look, I think is pretty goddamn ridiculous, but how does anyone, like, how do you look at this? I almost see this as them conceding the election. Like, you know that nobody who is going to be moved by the type of rhetoric of just like screaming Nazi incoherently with no argument attached to it. Those people are already in your camp. Nobody on the Trump side or that's up for grabs at this point is going to be moved by you hysterically shouting Nazi. And I'm sorry, but just objectively speaking, because it's so weird how much everything in the corporate media, everything they rely on is fake. The whole thing is fake. It's just this, even just watching this clip, like you are existing in a world that has nothing to do with reality, where there's anything, even if there are a million things you could say about Trump's 2024 campaign, or say about his 4-year track record, or say about what you think the next 4 years are going to be like. The idea that this is the American Nazi Party taking over is just not in the realm of reality. It's all fake. In the same way that the fucking Tony Hinchcliffe, the outrage about this is all fake. No vote has been flipped over Tony's jokes. There is not one Puerto Rican in the United States of America who was about to vote for Donald Trump, heard Tony Hinchcliffe's Puerto Rico joke, and went, "That's it." Took off his MAGA shirt, and there was like a Kamala Harris shirt underneath it. That has not happened. The whole thing is
garbage
fake.
People in the ocean make their decisions.
No, they got things to worry about, like what garbage floats and what doesn't. Okay, and they've figured it out pretty. Tupperware, you turn it upside down. And anyway, it's just none of this is real. They're reporting on it all day long. Like, this is all fake. This is not a real story. And the bottom line is that in this thing called reality that the corporate media seems to have no interest in engaging with, but in reality, the singular reality, Donald Trump went into the bluest of blue cities, sold out Madison Square Garden, had like a star-studded, like amazing event with a great crowd that was like super thrilled to be there, drew minimal protests. I heard Piers Morgan told me today that that he was talking to the Secret Service guys. He was at the event, and they said there were about 100. I think he said 100, maybe 150 people protesting. The idea that Donald Trump could come in and do a big event like that in 2016 and not draw a big protest would have been, you know what I mean? Like, there's like everything about this optically was just excellent for him. There's no debate about it. Right? How can you even look at it a different way? This is a win politically for Trump. And it's amazing how much it also helps him. It makes it almost double the win for him that his political enemies in the corporate media are just losing their fucking minds over it.
Yeah, they can't cover it. They can't tell you what was said. They can't give you the coverage of what was at the event. They can't say, "Oh wow, look, there actually is a lot of enthusiasm. I think Kamala Harris really might have to come out and contend with some of these issues." They can't do anything in the reality of real journalism.
Yeah.
Because if they did, then you might go, "Oh, I guess it's not just Nazis and racists that like this guy."
Well, exactly, dude. And to think that, okay, in the moment right after Biden, the few weeks after Joe Biden dropped out and Kamala Harris first got in the race, and I think there was a very real exhale from Democratic voters, who were just like, oh my, like especially when you've demonized Donald Trump so much, and then this is your guy, and you see your guy have a horrible debate performance and look like a dementia patient, and there's something very anxiety provoking about that. And then when he's out of the way and it's someone who doesn't have those issues, it's like, whew, sigh of relief. But in this moment, the corporate media nonstop told you she is the embodiment of joy and hope. People love her. They're so excited. Like, they just reported on this illusion, which we all called out at the time because their whole world is fake, of like an illusion of a phenomenon where she was this candidate. Yet you're watching it, however you feel about the candidates, you're watching right in front of you the proof that Trump really is creating some type of moment like that. Whether it's enough to win or not, we will find out, or maybe not. But like, and as they cover it, all they can say is like, the Nazis had a rally in the 30s. Like, I don't know, man. Donald Trump seems like a party to me. That seems like what he's having there is like a big goddamn party. And it doesn't seem like the problem is that he's a Nazi. It seems like the problem is that he's too cartoonishly pro-Israel. I don't know, but it's wild to see.
I mean, it's incredible for them with a straight face to try and sell, hey, 86 years ago, this is the exact venue that the Nazis played at, and then wipe out the entire history of the Garden, like there's some sort of a real affiliation.
We're supposed to pretend that there haven't been any events at Madison Square Garden since then. Like, it's unbelievable. That's why I made the joke about cash. Like, It is almost like saying like, what the thing all of us have, It's dubbed the world's most famous arena. I mean, the whole thing is nutty. And yeah, look, I mean, people are saying, and I saw even some people who were like, oh, like it was a bad idea for the campaign to have Tony Hinchcliffe go up and do his thing. And, I understand where people are coming from when they, and look, this is a decision was it a smart idea of the campaign to have Tony go do that at their thing? I understand where you could argue and people argue, oh, you're giving them an easy talking point or something like that. But listen, this whole thing is fake. They're calling you Hitler just for having an event in Madison Square Garden. It's like, I actually do kind of think it's a smart game that Trump's playing, where he's going like, how about we just brush it off? We don't care about these accusations at all, and we'll just be the side that's having fun. I think there's a really wise strategy in that, in life in general. Like, it's like, if you're ever in life, if you're ever like, and by the way, I say there's something kind of personal in a way to us, because we do this show where we're constantly talking about like things that are really horrible that are happening. But at the same time, when we go around, when we do our live event, what we're like pitching people on is like, hey, come have a great night. Come have a night of just laughing and enjoying yourself. Because like you just never, in life in general, if you're ever asking other people to come be angry with you, and that's your pitch, it's like, come over here and be angry with me, don't be surprised if that doesn't sell very well. Because most people do not want to say yes to an invitation to come just be angry. And as much as the corporate media is trying to spin this as a hate rally, like that's the idea, like that he's telling you to come here. You guys are the ones engaged in the hate rally. You're the ones saying, everybody come over here and be furious about the Nazi takeover of America all day long. Whereas what Trump is doing is saying, hey, you want to come to this awesome party? It's going to be the best. You're going to have the best night. This is going to be so entertaining. And like, it's amazing that they haven't figured this out yet in all these years.
There's something funny about, we're the party of joy. Now quit having your fun. How dare you have fun?
That's it.
And what do you want? Beyonce coming up and not singing?
Yeah, don't you?
You bring the best roast guy in the world. He tells some of the best roast jokes.
Yeah.
All politically themed. Probably just written for that event. Some great bangers.
And isn't it funny how they're picking out the Puerto Rican one, too?
It's such a benign one. I would think they'd be more upset with some of the sexual content.
Well, it's so funny, dude.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's almost like they went, it was like they were like, well, there's some Puerto Ricans in Pennsylvania and in Wisconsin, and so we got to let's go after that. But the shit, he gave it to Muslims and Jews and Puerto Rican. He did what Tony Hinchcliffe does. He gave it to everyone.
And we want to get those Puerto Ricans back to Puerto Rico anyways.
Yeah, listen.
So let them know they're not welcome.
It's not crazy. And also, we got to start moving the Overton window in the direction of you're not really one of us.
I thought when he told that, it didn't even get, but right off the bat when he goes, like all my Latinos are allowed to, can I get a clap? And they all applaud. And he goes, you see how many of them snuck in or whatever? I thought that was so great.
I thought he did great. I thought he did what he does. And he was great at it. And I thought it was cool that it's like, from the perspective of just Tony, it's like, yeah, like that's who he is and that's what you're going to get no matter what environment you put him in. There was I thought Tucker Carlson gave a great speech. And there was something, I wanted to play a part of this because it really, this kind of stuck out to me. And I did think that there was something about this that, Tucker was touching on something like a very important dynamic. In many ways, I thought it was kind of almost like the best argument for Trump. And in a way, I think Tucker is kind of he's the thought leader intellectually of the MAGA movement right now. Trump is obviously like the guy. He is the figurehead. Tucker is probably like the second, most popular guy amongst that crowd, but he's the guy who's, read books about stuff and actually knows what he's talking about and can actually speak in depth on like multiple different issues. And, and there was something anyway. I want to play this clip and then kind of like talk about it for a minute. But I thought there was something very interesting in what he said that resonated with me for sure. So here is Tucker Carlson at MSG.
Has empowered the rest of us through mostly just sticking around in the face of their hate and abuse and persecution. He has given the rest of us the right to call BS on the charade. No, you are not better than us. No, you are not smarter than us. No, you do not deserve what you have. You probably stole it. No, you're not going to bully me into silence anymore. And I can promise you at this point, 9 days out, when Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Elon Musk and Tulsi Gabbard and pretty much every high school senior and college shorty girl in the country has come out finally say, yeah, I am for Donald Trump, actually. When the entire country has realized there is nothing embarrassing about this. What's embarrassing is to take a perfectly great country and destroy it, as they have. I'm not ashamed. You should be. At that moment, it's going to be pretty tough for them 10 days from now to look in the eye to America with a straight face. It's going to be pretty hard to look at us and say, you know what? Kamala Harris, she got 85 million votes because she's just so impressive. As the first Samoan, Malaysian, low IQ, former California prosecutor ever to be elected president, it was just a groundswell of popular support. And anyone who thinks otherwise is just a freak or a criminal. At this stage of the game, after 9 years of listening to their lies and finding every single one of them totally false, no, it's not safe and effective, and no, she's not impressive. It's very hard for me to believe the rest of us are going to say, you know what, Joe Scarborough, you're right. You're right. She won fair and square because she's just so impressive. I don't think so. And to me, that is liberation. It's the freedom to say what's obviously true as a free man and not a slave.
Oh, okay. So I love that. And I do think that, first of all, there's a lot to break down there, but I do think there really is something. And I think it's something that oftentimes libertarians kind of miss out on. Like there are policy questions, and then there are things that are more like kind of deep cultural, bordering on spiritual questions. And like, I do think there's something that's happening in the air right now where it is, you do see like celebrities lining up behind Trump in a way that you didn't in his previous campaigns. You do see people who are now taking this opinion that and listen, I know there's a million libertarians out there. I know there's some libertarians who aren't happy with me over some of the things I've been saying about considering voting for Donald Trump. And I get a lot of them will just say things back to me that I've said a million times, like, Trump was terrible on this. How could you vote for the guy who supported this? And look, I'm not saying there's no point to that. There is a major point. There's like, he was terrible on all those issues. I do not have high hopes for a Donald Trump second term. I don't think Donald Trump's going to get in there and like hack up the warfare state or cut government spending. And I bet that even after all of this, he still appoints terrible people and he's still, but there's something, and it's just as important as tax policy or gun policy or the boom bust theory of like economic, cycles, where it's like, look, the entire apparatus, the entire power structure, the political class, the corporate media, Hollywood, like the big tech companies that were fucking forced to do it by the government, and all of the big finance, all of the big money, they've all gone in behind in saying like supporting this guy is an unacceptable opinion. And you see a lot of Americans almost shaking it off. And as Tucker's saying, going, well, that's what I fucking stand for. And you know what? Fuck you, because you're nobody to tell me what's an allowable opinion and what's not. Like, that is it. I have the freedom to think outside of the fake world that you have constructed for me, which, by the way, I know is all bullshit. And I know that you constructed it for your own advantage against mine. Like, even the line that Tucker said there about like just like assuming like you didn't earn that, you probably stole it. That is true for like everyone in the, like, if you're talking about like the suburbs of Washington, D.C. or of New York City where all these people we're talking about live, all of them just got it from these like crony the Wall Street casino or the government spending parasite class. You know, and like there is something about like, no, we don't look up at you like you know better than us. We look at you like you're the enemy of the American people, and you did something that's, as he points out here, something that's actually outrageous and offensive. Forget Tony Hinchcliffe's joke. You fucking ruined the United States of America. You inherited, and he's talking to the entire like power structure in DC. You inherited the United States of America and presided over its bankruptcy, and not just fiscally, like culturally and spiritually and morally, like in every sense. You guys took the greatest goddamn country in the history of the world and made it the most war-hungry, fucking like evil country in the world. Like what? That's actually offensive. That's outrageous. And like, fuck you. So that's like the first part of what he's saying. And there is something there. I'm not saying you have to vote for him. And I understand the good reasons not to. All I'm really saying is to like the critics of Donald Trump and libertarians or others who are like, nope, he was too bad on this issue. He was too bad on this issue. Fine. If that's how you feel, fine. But if you miss the point that I'm making, I think you're missing that at your own peril. Like you're missing something big that's going on. I think it is very good for us to have that dynamic that Tucker's talking about. A bunch of people saying that like, no, actually CNN and the big banks and the weapons companies are not going to dictate to me what my opinion on the world is.
Love it. I love his line. I mean, this isn't the way he put it, but that Kamala Harris is the safe and effective of political candidates.
Great.
Yeah,
so
it's just,
great.
It's such a great way of putting it, of just that we are rejecting that you guys get to create the status norms. Same as you told us we were all crazy if we didn't want to get the vaccine, and then it turned out the compliance rates weren't that high, and you kept selling it. The only people that aren't getting these are these conspiracy anti-vaccine nuts. Yep. And he's 100% right that if they manage to get all the corpses to come out and show up for Kamala Harris, and we have the even larger election numbers in the last one, I think everyone's going to be going, hey, who really even showed up for this lady?
Well, so now getting to that part of what Tucker's saying here, because it's a message that he's sending. And also, by the way, I mean, it's such a boss move that like just Tucker is the one who gets, I mean, this was aired on Fox News. Like this was aired on the network that fired him. You know what I mean? And he gets to send this. But look, there are people, many of them, right? The respectable people, the people in the corporate media who will say that, okay, here's what Tucker Carlson is doing right here. Okay. You see, this is, they're setting up the next January 6th. They're setting up the next election denial. See, he's saying if Kamala Harris does end up with this huge vote total, we won't believe you or whatever. What's actually happening in reality is that it's almost the inverse of that. What Tucker is saying here is that if you motherfuckers try to steal this, we're all going to know that you stole it. And that's what he's getting ahead of. He's going, look, we can all look around and feel this. And if you're going to sit here and say that Kamala Harris broke the record of more votes than anyone else got, which is what you're going to need to say in order to steal this thing on her behalf, none of us are going to believe you. And it's a very interesting game to be playing. And I would just say that, you know, Tucker is a guy who had deep connections into the swamp. I mean, this was a guy who lived in Washington, D.C. and was at the top of the corporate media game for decades. And I'm just saying he knows a lot of people and he knows a lot about how the fucking thing actually works in a way that none of us do. You know what I mean? Like none of us, you know, I could sit here and tell you, you know, what Victoria Nuland was doing in 2014 and the moves she was making. But like, I haven't had dinner with her. You know, when you talk to Tucker will tell you a story about how their breath stinks or something, you know, like he like knows them. And this is his take, is that like they need to know right now that they're not going to get away with stealing this, which is kind of interesting on its own, you know?
That's a great moment, and overall the spectacle of that rally and the roster of people that he brought out to support him. The fact that he's got Kennedy on the team now, and what's her name from Hawaii? So bad with names.
Tulsi Gabbard.
Mm-hmm. It was a very impressive affair.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really hard to look at it in any other way if you're being objective at all. And it does just seem that the hysteria, and I mean, there were, by the way, the clip we showed you, there were lots of clips. It's been days at this point and stuff gets out of like the cycle. But the people in the corporate media, Mika Brzezinski, said that he's killing us, just all of these meltdowns. And it's like, I don't know how it's almost like if you were, if they're in a 12-round fight, and you're going into the last round or something like that, and one boxer is, like cheering with his hands up, and the other guy has his hands on his knees and is just breathing heavy, and you're just like, okay, this looks like obviously everything is in this guy's favor. To see Trump's opponents freaking out and quite literally melting down, like I don't know how else to say it, and then to watch Trump doing what he's doing, it's hard to not look at that and go, wow. I mean, you couldn't, if you're a Trump guy, you couldn't hope for a better close.
The other thing that I was taken away as being somewhat promising, and after I was traveling all day yesterday, and I watched all of Donald Trump on Rogan.
Well, that's what we're going to talk about next.
At some point, Donald Trump's creating so much television that you're like, I can't watch all of this. But the fact that he's prominently displaying both Vivek and RFK Jr. suggests to me that they will actually have cabinet positions, and also. I mean, this will be Donald Trump's last run, if he's there. It's these 4 years. Yeah. So I think on some of the things that we need to solve as a country, I don't know that he's going to have a strong incentive to not actually do that. Like, I think Vivek wants to stick around. I think him and J.D. Vance are probably front runners for running the next time. I think whatever cabinet position I think these guys are going to actually try and solve some stuff, which is, of the presidential runs that I've seen, people's core things are usually more, hey, I'm going to get you free healthcare. I'm going to get your college paid for, or I'm going to build a wall, and they don't get that done. But it's very rarely, hey, we're actually going to try and roll back some government here. Hey, we're going to try and look into this health problem and roll back the relationship FDA has with these drug companies. Very rarely do you see that. And I think all those people want to stick around. And I don't think there's any reason I don't think Donald Trump has a financial incentive in those industries that he's going to look to not allow them to crusade on that. So yeah, it might be interesting.
No, I agree. I mean, look, they're still up against it, because it's not just the fact that they're going to have to deal with, like, let's say you appoint Bobby Kennedy to some important position and like overseeing, some oversight position of like overseeing pharmaceutical companies or something like that. Okay, he's still going to have to deal with all of the fucking all the other people in the cabinet who may, be deeply in bed with some of these entrenched interests. He's going to have to deal with the Congress. He's going to have to deal with the amount of power that there is there, right? So it's still like a long shot, but with Donald Trump, for all the bad things you could say about him, and there are plenty, to have guys like Bobby Kennedy, like in his very close circle, to have Bobby Kennedy and Vivek Ramaswamy and Tucker Carlson and Tulsi Gabbard and these people, it does at least feel like there's a chance there. At least someone might be attempting to do the right thing. Whereas there's just nothing like that on the other side, and there hasn't really been. Now, again, that's still, I still am sure like Donald Trump might have a few more good appointments. I do agree with what you're saying. The fact that Vivek and Tulsi and RFK are so involved with him and are in so many events with him does seem to indicate that maybe he would actually keep them around. He's also floated out some pretty bad people for like defense secretary. And so I'm not, we'll see what happens.
And I guess it is politics, and we've seen Donald Trump just dump people, such as Steve Bannon, or when he played Romney real good and he offered him the cabinet position.
Oh yeah, no, he might.
Him out.
Yeah, he might. That's also possible. But regardless, there's something there. At least there's something. So, unfortunately, that's what we've got to work with. Look, let's talk a bit about the Rogan podcast. I guess I just start politically speaking. I thought it was a huge win for Trump. I mean, just enormous. He got done everything he was supposed to get done. He was himself. He wasn't being phony, and he didn't get busted or exposed in any moments like that. He he was charming and he seemed to win Joe Rogan over on the podcast. And they got into some interesting topics that like aren't typically covered. It was, I thought he was a bit evasive at times, if you want to say that, but in a very Trumpian way where it almost seems very real and very stream of conscious. He just gets distracted by, and did I mention it was the biggest building? And big buildings.
That's
and then,
so long. You never seen a bed this
yeah,
long.
yeah,
He was
like,
a tall guy.
He was a tall guy,
Yeah.
and he kept looking at it. And it's like weird, right? Things like that where he got off on like tangents, and Joe was trying to bring him back, but just politically speaking, you don't go, yeah, dude. I mean, listen, if Kamala Harris went and pulled that off on the Joe Rogan Experience, you'd be like, well, she'd win the election. I mean, so it's like, politically speaking, it was a win for Trump. I don't really see any other way to look at it.
I thought it was risky for Donald Trump to go there, particularly because he appears to me to be winning. And I thought he did a great job. Firstly, he had some great lines. He just had some really funny moments where he said they would never try and kill Joe Biden because he's too inconsequential.
Yeah,
that was great. He had some bangers. I thought his best kind of theme throughout the episode was his general pitch of, hey, I come into these situations with common sense. I thought his ISIS story was great, where he's like, I'm getting bad information from these generals. I flew over there. I met with the better people, and we got it done in 3 weeks. I don't know if that's true, but it's a great story. Or the California water story. I have no idea if it's true also, but it's a good example of, hey, there's some common sense solutions here. You guys could have plenty of water in California, and you guys are dumping it in the ocean. And then to speak to his credit, even on the whole thing that was going on with the election claims, where he was claiming he won the election, he weaseled his way right out of that conversation, and he stuck to his story. And I felt like he did a very good job of moving things along and getting out of any tough spots. So I thought he sat there for 3 hours and he gave a good pitch.
The fact that he did the full 3 hours was huge too. It wouldn't have been the same if he didn't.
Right.
Like it would have been like, oh, you didn't really do the
Right.
Joe Rogan Experience. You just went and talked to Joe Rogan for 45 minutes. It doesn't really count. But he did the full 3 hours. I do agree with you. I thought that was probably one of his worst moments. Well, just because it's always a little bit different when he battles someone in the corporate media, because they're so adversarial to him that when he sticks his ground in battles, it's kind of like, well, whatever. They were just trying to get him. But when Rogan's just asking in good faith and just being like, hey, so what, like, why do you believe that? And he's got nothing. I think it doesn't look good. There were a few moments that bugged me. There were things, okay, so the two things, I think I mentioned these both to you, but they still were just the two moments to me that was like, had me like, frustrated. But number one, Donald Trump, he gets on there and he's giving, he had mentioned this at a speech and there were a couple articles written about it, but this pitch, which is like the greatest goddamn pitch that a president could ever have, that we're going to get rid of income taxes. And like, this is amazing. You're like, holy shit, like even if this never happens, and obviously this is very far-fetched for, being implemented anytime soon, but the fact that like a presidential candidate, the most popular, guy in right-wing America, and, this guy who's very likely going to be the next president and has tens of millions of people who support him, is out there saying like, hey, think about it like this. You'd just be better off if we didn't have the income tax at all. That's like, I am not downplaying how powerful that is. And so he's got this moment now where Rogan's like, okay, so tell me about that. He just throws it to him like, tell me about it. And immediately, instead, so he's basically like, we could just have tariffs and raise the money that way. We don't need to have an income tax. And when he's asked to like explain that, instead of going to the obvious, like, we would just go like, hey, like every person who has a job who's listening to this right now, can you just think about how awesome it would be if you didn't have to pay income tax anymore? Like, you would be richer. I am going to give you a huge raise, a bigger raise than you've ever gotten at your job. It's just abolishing taxes. You don't have to pay taxes anymore. Think about just unleashing the ingenuity of America, like finally, like unshackling this like, powerful machine that will be allowed to like thrive. We're going to be the biggest economy in the history of the world. You could attack it from like being like, listen, are we slaves or are we free men here? You don't have to incriminate yourself to the government every goddamn year because you've committed the crime of being a productive member of society. Who the hell are you? Have you read the Bill of Rights? You have a right to privacy. You have a right to not incriminate yourself, and you own your body. You own your work. Like there's so much. But instead, he just pivots right into how great tariffs are. How great tariffs. Tariffs are just so wonderful. Let me tell you about all the great presidents who had tariffs and tariffs. And it was almost like repealing the income tax became like a footnote in his plan to repeal the income tax. So I thought that was like awful and a huge missed opportunity for him. And then the other one was like when he was about to have what I thought was going to be the best moment of the whole podcast was when he started talking about his terrible appointments and how he didn't really know anyone in DC, but then he can't do that. So he has to immediately pivot to how it was actually really great to have John Bolton working for him. Oh yeah, you got this crazy, war-loving guy right next to you, and then people want to deal with you. Except that's not how it happened. John Bolton blew the North Korea deal. He was on the verge of getting this like historic, amazing deal where we maybe could have moved toward taking one of the nuclear threats off the table and maybe even freeing the 60 plus million prisoners that the guy's got in his country or moving toward that. But no, your dumb war hawk national security advisor ruined those negotiations. So like, what the fuck, dude? No, don't sit here and defend to me it was a brilliant policy to have John Bolton in the room. No, it fucking wasn't. Like, what do you mean? And by the way, Donald Trump, you're erratic enough that everyone's scared. Nobody's like Trump would never have the balls to drop a bomb on me. Like, you got that covered, dude, So anyway, I hated that. That was like my, personal gripe with it. I was very unsatisfied with his answers on those topics. But there's a lot more to it than that. Sorry, go ahead.
Overall, I thought it was a good appearance on those two particular topics. And all right, let's start with the tariffs. If you're economically illiterate, it's as sexy of a story as the modern monetary theory of, hey, we can take on as much debt as we need and everything could be free. If you don't understand tariffs, the idea of, hey, you don't have to pay taxes because we're going to tax China with a tariff and they're going to cover it for you.
They're going to pay your taxes for you.
It sounds sexy. You just got to dig in a little bit and go, well, doesn't that become a consumer tax when everything I need to go purchase is more expensive because there's a tariff on it?
Yep.
And now maybe you prefer a taxation system where there's a heavy consumer tax instead of an income tax. There's an argument for it.
Sure.
But the idea that your life is just made much better by a tariff, it just takes, well, what's the next step in the process?
Yeah.
On the appointment issue, because I think that's probably, his biggest blunder, he needs to own it a little bit more. And I think you had said this to me when we were talking about it, of the last time I was the outsider and I didn't have the best staffing positions. They really undermined what I was looking to do. But luckily now I have the experience of having done it for 4 years. And all things said, I still did the best job anyone's ever did. You could still throw your bravado in there and go, I know how to staff at this time. We're ready to go. I'm going to have my people in there. And maybe you could even just start, like I'm putting RFK in on the health thing. You could start teasing your appointments. All things considered, for how many deep state people he ended up in there that were undermining him. For that 20 minutes of that conversation, he took it great. It was graceful enough that I didn't watch it the way I'll watch Kamala Harris or other people and go, wow, you're ruining this.
No. I agree with you. Look, I will say, and I can't not bring this up, which is one of the major things that I was thinking about the whole time. And I will fully admit that there's something self-serving about the way I'm looking at it, or there's a conflict of interest, I guess, for me to be completely neutral here. But there is, look, first of all, the podcast is doing phenomenally well. I don't know how many, so when Kamala Harris went on that Call Her Daddy podcast, now I did not know what that podcast was, but both of you two, when you were telling me what it was, and then everybody who I talked to that week, what they all told me the same was like, no, this is the Joe Rogan for women. And that she rivals Rogan for being as big as him. And that they were like, she was number one at one point on Spotify, and then he was, and that they were like competing. The Kamala Harris episode of Call Her Daddy, I think last I checked, was sitting at like 700,000 views. Donald Trump and Rogan are, I believe, around 30-something million right now. A couple days after it's been up just on YouTube. And Rogan's Spotify is like where his audience is. I mean, I don't know. I don't know exactly right now that he went back to being on both, you know what I mean? But there's millions listening on Spotify, like whatever the number is substantial. And so you see this kind of happen, right? Like this huge moment. And if Donald Trump wins here, as much as it seems like the value of Joe Rogan's show couldn't go any higher, it really just took a whole nother leap. Like, this was the thing. Both candidates in the fourth quarter were like, I think we got to pull out the big gun. and the big gun is sitting down with Joe Rogan. And by the way, one of her people confirmed recently that they had agreed to do it and then pulled out. And he said it was like for scheduling conflicts or something like that. But the thing about it is you look at the numbers Donald Trump's doing and like, I'm sorry, man, when you're talking about doing a show that is, when it's all done, I mean, this thing's going to crack 100 million people listen to 3 hours of your thing. That is, when you're running for president, if there's something with 100 million people listening to you for 3 hours, there is no scheduling conflict. There is no such thing, because you would move anything around to make that happen. So anyway, just my point is that this does like, again, this is on kind of on the same theme where they're like, look, there are the tangible things like policies and appointments, and those really matter. But there's also kind of like these intangible things that matter a lot too. And this is like, the corporate media has been just getting death blow after death blow after death blow over the last few years. But this is like, while they're down, a huge blow to them, a huge blow that Rogan is the guy. This is the show. This is the big gun. No one was thinking like, hey man, this is the last week. We got to do a CNN town hall. That was not going to move the needle, and it's laughable to even suggest that it would. But doing Rogan is like a huge fucking thing. And listen, I will say, as I prefaced by like, obviously I have a little bit of a self-interest in this too. So I'm trying my best to, admit that and take that into account. But it's like, obviously, to make Rogan's show that much more valuable, and also just because, look, this whole world of like alternative, whatever the hell we're in, guys who are talking about politics who aren't a part of the corporate machine, to it like embolden them and even further diminish the corporate media, I think is like an enormous victory. An enormous victory. It's like, if you could just do one thing. If like the one thing you could do was to like get Ron Paul to be the Fed chairman or something like that, or the one thing you could do is like discredit the entire corporate media. It's not so obvious which one is the right thing to do. That's my own. If the corporate media had the monopoly on the control of information that they had in 1992, and you put Ron Paul as the head of the Fed chair, corporate media is probably just going to ruin Ron Paul. You know what I mean? They will convince all of your parents and grandparents that he is some horrible, awful guy, and he's going to have to step down over some scandal in a few. You know what I mean? I'm not saying, don't get me wrong. It'd be really amazing to get Ron Paul as the Fed chairman. I'm not saying that wouldn't be important. In fact, probably that's the one to pick out of the two. I don't know. But I'm just saying, like, discrediting the corporate media is right up there. It's huge. This is their mechanism of controlling the conversation. And, like, what a blow. What a blow to them that this is done completely outside of their control. The guy who they said ought to be canceled and the guy who they said ought to be locked up, impeached, never run again, all of this, they sit down without any of you and control the conversation. It's amazing.
I think it's a game changer in that it feels like the wheel has just turned for alternative media. And where I think that this is the death blow is that their entire world revolves around access and kind of the credibility of, oh, we're the people with the access and we're doing the real work. Yeah, it's so interesting to me as a person who was not a good student, could have never landed a job at any network ever, could have never had, and it's not an intelligence thing. I'm just telling you, based off of applications, whatever. I never got a production job. I probably never could have gotten a staff writing job. Like, there's nothing. And that whole universe is just gone.
Yeah.
And how much worse is it going to be for that entire universe is there's not just more viewers being pulled into the alternative media, but that's actually where the news is, because that's where the president is and that's where he's making his biggest pitch. And in the next election cycle, I can tell you every single person running is going to be trying to get on Rogan. And if they can't get on Rogan, they're going to be trying to get on every one of the other programs. So I think then that also changes it, because then the actual news is being made on the alternative media programs. It's not even like I got to tune into Fox News because it's like, oh, all of these people are here, so I have to hear what they said, so then I can talk about it over here. They might actually be here. Yeah. That changes the game.
Oh, yeah, and look, you're 100% right, and you got to kind of zoom out to appreciate it, but to just zoom out and go, look, it has been such a short period of time that we've had this at all. Like, social media is not very old. Podcasts are not very old. These are all things that I've been doing stand-up comedy since before they were things. I mean, they existed, but like they were so fringe, and like most comedians didn't have social media when I first started stand-up comedy. It was kind of viewed as like a thing, like, I don't know, that's something college kids do. It's not like we're professional comedians. We don't do that. And then there were a few people who were like big on MySpace, and then like the younger guys would be like, you should get on MySpace because like that's how you connect with fans and stuff. But the idea that there were shows like this that were so much bigger than the corporate media, it existed to some degree in the 2020 election, to a much smaller degree in the 2016 election, barely existed in the 2012 election. Like these are all pretty new. And what Trump has done, like obviously Bobby Kennedy did a lot of it, and Vivek Ramaswamy did a lot of it when he was running for president, but it's a little bit different coming from Donald Trump, the guy who looks like he's about to be president again. But he basically leveraged a podcast tour as his campaign. I mean, it's not like he did some of the traditional media too, but everyone kind of already knows what it looks like when he does CNN or does one of these debates. And this was how he showcased a completely different side of himself. He went into these long form conversations, at this point, many podcasts. I mean, it's not just that he did Rogan. This was clearly, Rogan is the biggest one, and obviously this made the biggest splash. But he did Andrew Schultz and Patrick Bet-David and Theo Vaughn and a few of the ones that aren't in the world that I like know about as much, but a bunch of like bigger podcasts. And there is something about that you're like, if that, not only is that being done regularly by a presidential candidate, but if he then wins, and it's like, that's how you got elected now, and people have to come through, they have to march through that scene going forward, that's going to be a huge dynamic shift in all of this. And one that I think offers many more possibilities for potential good things to happen than if it just continued to be like, oh, the four corporate outlets that the war party owns. That's where you have to go through. I would much rather have them have to go to Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan, And it's a much better situation for the country.
I think the major news companies are going to die to close to nothing, or they're going to really have to change the way they do business.
Yeah, well, in a weird way, I was talking to Piers Morgan about this earlier today, because I was just like, in a weird way, he is the only one who seems to be attempting to adapt.
Right.
Like he's the only one who's from the legacy corporate media who's like, okay, well, what if I bring on podcasters and people from that media and these people, and then we host these fiery debates and all that. And he's at least trying, and it's getting huge ratings, however you feel about, the show devolves into a shit show at times, but I do like Pierce and I like doing the show. But it is kind of to your point that like, yeah, you guys are either going to have to change your business model or do.
And what makes me think that they can't change their business model is I don't even know if Comedy Central exists as a network anymore. I don't know what happens over there. I guess they do the Daily Show. South Park decided to take off the presidential season. I don't know how much new programming exists at Comedy Central, but amidst this changing climate, and maybe it's just because Netflix has more of the money now. It's not like they tried to go out and buy Tony or go out and buy, you know what I mean? They didn't like readapt and go, oh, well, we got the money here, so let's bring this all back under our roof and try and, produce sketch shows with all of these top comics. Let's figure out how we can revamp and actually bring in all this talent which then costs money. When you don't develop the talent and you got to go out and buy it once it's developed, it's more expensive. But I haven't seen them make any effort, nor do I see them producing new things. I just see Comedy Central as something that's probably not going to exist in 10 years. Or if it does, it's just going to be the old archive for whatever the just TV generic commercial spots are, which have to play increasingly less and less as you have less and less people watching or paying attention to it.
Well, one of the things that, we've talked about over the last few weeks too has been kind of the, as we talked about today, like the response of the corporate media to all of this, and even the stuff like when Obama was coming out and lecturing black men about how they're sexist. We've seen a lot. Michelle Obama continued that trend in her speech the other day. And I think that there is one of the things that holds them back, whether it's Comedy Central or the corporate media or something like that, is that they still have the hubris and the they still have this mentality, this very pompous, holier than thou mentality that was developed over the years of having this monopoly control. And as the control has gone, they have been unable to adjust to that. So like the people at CNN still look down their nose in disgust with anybody who doesn't, you know what I mean? Like do it the way they do it, even though they're failing. It's almost like, you know, if you could imagine, like if someone was a bodybuilder, and they cheated to get where they were. They took a bunch of steroids. They had the whole system rigged for them. The judges were all in their pockets and were saying, but they were like and then like over time, because they had bought off the judges and whatever the whole thing, they started to have a lot of atrophy. They got smaller and smaller and smaller. They weren't that big. They weren't even in the gym anymore. Now it was just like a fat guy. And everybody started leaving. Nobody started coming to their bodybuilding competitions anymore. You know, they're all gone and they're over to a different one. But they still had the same attitude like when they were the successful bodybuilder and everyone was coming to their show, and they're still sitting there like, you know, like flexing and posing. But you're like, you're just like a fat guy now with no one in the audience. But it's almost that mentality where they can't escape it to even adapt to the new market and figure out what we have to do. It's like it's all across. It's like the legacy media people have this enormous sense of superiority. I was briefly talking about it backstage with Mehdi Hassan earlier today, where we were kind of talking about, and he's from like the corporate media world, and he was still going like, he was like, yeah, well, the whole podcast scene has totally killed the media. Like, and I was saying that, and he was like, oh yeah, it's totally true. It's a shame because we need real journalism, you know? And like, he's like, what Theo Vaughn and Joe Rogan did with Trump was not real journalism and blah, blah. And like, I kind of get what he's saying. I get that, like, they weren't just grilling him about like his like, well, your battle plans in Syria were this or not that, you know, but it's not like you get anything like that out of the corporate media anyway. All they would do is ask him gotcha questions about January 6th for 20 minutes and then just spin everything and lie. And, you know, it's like that we weren't getting it from them anyway. So fuck that. Burn that system down and let's try to build up something better. At least that's how I feel about it. And it's hard to not say like, I also do think that, again, libertarians can take this or leave this. And I know that, look, I know whenever it comes to like voting for someone or even thinking about voting for them, there's always going to be people who get annoyed by whatever decision you make. I understand that. But it is hard to not like, kind of like as you look at it and go, look, this isn't the fantasy. You know, whatever the fantasy is about like the people wake up, the message is delivered to them the right way, and they understand free markets and central banking and government intervention and all this shit, and they're good on all of it now. And a young Ron Paul is going into the White House to clean up this whole mess or something. It's not that. I'm not saying that's what's happening at all. However, I will say that within that world, this new world of influence that's being built up, you're talking about people like Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson and Vivek Ramaswamy and Bobby Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard, and, you know, like in that world, there is a real libertarian influence on all of those people. Now, none of them I would describe as like strict, pure libertarians. You know, Vivek is probably the closest, but I'm not, you know what I mean? None of them are exactly good on everything. But there is no question. I mean, Elon Musk will, if you follow his Twitter, like he'll often tweet out a Milton Friedman video or, okay, again, I'm not saying anything's perfect, but it's at least something about like government being too big and out of control. None of them are good on Israel, but other than that, there is a tendency to be more suspicious of wars than for them, a tendency to be more suspicious of regulation, a tendency to be more suspicious of kind of like government collusion of power. You know, they may dismiss them as conspiracy theorists or something like that, but it's like, I'd much rather have the people who are very concerned about government colluding with private interests to rig the system against regular people. Like there's just, we at least have some influence with them. There's some type of libertarian spirit that animates a little bit of that conversation. On top of that, you have Donald Trump, who came to the Libertarian Party convention, has promised to free Ross and to put a libertarian in his cabinet. God willing, he keeps those promises. Who knows? But there's at least like, there's something there. And at the same time as you have that, you have Kamala Harris campaigning with Liz Cheney and the entire corporate media meltdown machine desperately trying to prop her up so that they can retain their importance in dominating American thought. And it is, I will just say, and I feel this way, including 2016 and 2020, there's never been an election that I've seen before where there wasn't like, of the major two-party candidates, there was such a major difference between them, and one that was doing something so clearly preferable to what the other one is doing, that at least like even you said, like, I don't know, there seems to be a chance that he's at least going to unleash Bobby Kennedy and Vivek Ramaswamy on some little portions of the government and let them go attack the, you know what I mean, the corruption there. It's something. It's something. And the goddamn close to this campaign has really been something. I don't know. Final thoughts of the show, Rob. I'll give it to you.
As we're down to the wire this week, Sunday, tune in.
There
8
you go.
p.m. You will have my debut comedy special up on my channel, Robbie the Fire. And this weekend, I'm in New Hampshire at the Shell. And then we'll also put the first 10 minutes up on Dave's channel, probably a little bit before mine goes live.
All right, sounds good. Thanks for watching, everybody. Partoftheproblem.com to support the show. If you want to watch the shows live, unfree, ad censored, go over there and support the show. ComicDaveSmith.com, and that's all. Peace.